Hello, everyone. Welcome to MIT Sloan Alumni Online. Before we get started today, we're going to try something a little bit different. We'd love to find out where everyone is joining us from today. So if you're joining us via computer, can you please take a second to just complete the poll on the right-hand side of your screen? I'm going to wait just a couple seconds while people start to answer that question. And then as we're waiting for the results of the poll, I'd like to take a moment to welcome you to today's program. Every month, MIT Sloan Alumni Online brings you the latest breaking news, cutting-edge research, groundbreaking ideas, and school updates from MIT Sloan faculty, alumni, and students. Today, we are thrilled to welcome Dawn Zier, SM87 and SM90, and our first alumna speaker. During Dawn's presentation, please feel free to type in any questions you may have for her in the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. During the second half of our program, Dawn will be answering as many questions as we're able to get into today. Before I introduce Dawn, I'd like to take a second to look at our poll results. So as those are calculating, we should see a result in just 1 second. And we'll keep you posted on those. I'm not seeing them yet, so we'll keep you posted on what those results are. And in the meantime, I would now like to formally introduce our MIT Sloan Alumni Online speaker, alumna Dawn Zier, President and Chief Executive Officer of Nutrisystem, an innovative provider of weight loss programs offering a variety of home-delivered, nutritionally balanced meals, retail products, and advanced digital tools. Since taking the helm in late 2012, Dawn has embarked on an ambitious 4-point turnaround and growth plan for Nutrisystem. This encompassed bringing in a new management team, enhancing the company's integrated e-commerce marketing capabilities, and introducing several new product lines, including a breakthrough digital weight loss tool and industry-first retail offerings. Her mission in 2013 was to fix it fast. And then from 2014 and beyond, it has been about innovation and growth. In 2015 and 16, Dawn championed a strategic vision that centers on building a multi-brand and multi-channel approach to capture a more significant share of the weight loss market and to expand to the broader health and wellness space. The strategic acquisition of the South Beach Diet brand was one of the first steps. The overall results of all of these efforts is the resurgence at Nutrisystem under Dawn's leadership. In 2014, the company experienced its first full year of revenue growth in 7 years. Guidance for 2017 implies that the company will have its 4th consecutive year of double-digit growth. Both the company's profits and stock value have increased more than 6 times within her tenure. Dawn's performance has ranked in the top 10% of all NASDAQ companies, and the company was recently described as on fire by the Philadelphia Business Journal and surpassed the $1.5 billion market cap mark. Dawn received a master's in electrical engineering and computer science, as well as an MBA from MIT, and has held positions at AT&T and Chase Manhattan Bank. Dawn joined Nutrisystem from Reader's Digest, where she held numerous leadership positions throughout her tenure, culminating with president of the international business, the company's largest division, responsible for nearly $1 billion of revenue and 1,000 employees across Europe, Asia Pacific, and Latin America. In addition to being a member of Nutrisystem's board of directors, Dawn serves on the board of directors for Spirit Airlines and is currently chair of the American Heart Association's 2017 Go Red for Women initiative in Philadelphia. Today, Dawn will be talking about the art of a turnaround, one fact-based decision at a time. Dawn, thank you so much for being here today. We are absolutely thrilled to have you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you very much. Thank you, Renee, and to the MIT Sloan Office of External Relations for our session today, for hosting it, and to the MIT Sloan Annual Fund for making programs like this possible. What a great privilege to be speaking with my fellow alumni from Sloan and the broader Sloan community, as well as other special guests about a topic that I'm very passionate about, the art of the turnaround, and in this case, specifically Nutrisystem. Let me briefly introduce myself. I think, Renee, you did a great job, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this slide, but you know, MIT, always close and dear to my heart, a master's in electrical engineering and computer science, followed by a master's in the business school from Sloan. Given my roots to Boston, I'm a huge Patriots fan, but really being from New York, definitely not a Red Sox fan. I think my greatest accomplishment, although I've had a very exciting career and a privilege to work at several name brand companies, Chase Manhattan, AT&T, Reader's Digest, and now Nutrisystem, my greatest accomplishment certainly has been a mom of two wonderful kids. And while I went to school for engineering, I didn't really stay in the engineering profession for a long time. I practiced it for maybe 2 years, but the engineering education that I received really has formulated the way that I think and that I problem solve, and I would say is one of the greatest assets I have as being a CEO. So for those of you who are not familiar with Nutrisystem, let me take you back a little bit in time. First off, we're an e-commerce-based company that is a leader in the weight loss industry, and we've helped millions of people lose weight by delivering structured and meal delivery programs into the home. Let me set the stage. It's early 2013 when I arrived at Nutrisystem. The stock had gone roughly from $70 to $7, following 5 straight years of revenue declines, profit declines, and obviously the stock price. I was brought in to do a turnaround, and I had pretty extensive experience from Reader's Digest doing turnarounds, and I love problem solving, call it the engineer in me, but I love breaking down complex problems into manageable components and then building it back up again. So here's what was going on at Nutrisystem. While a household brand, it had lost its relevance, and the brand certainly needed to be dusted off. The company had a serious, very serious marketing problem. It was selling food, not weight loss. We'll talk more about that in a few minutes. The messages weren't resonating to the consumer, and we'd resorted to discounting, which really is a death spiral, a race to the bottom. The prior management team had spent a lot of time on food development, but hadn't really innovated around the program itself. And we really were thinking of ourselves as a one-size-fits-all product in an arena where customers were increasingly demanding customization, and we had a tremendous fear of cannibalizing ourselves. So that was what happened when I walked in. Okay, so what surprised me when I arrived most to Nutrisystem was the culture. And it's hard to really get a solid feel on a culture from an interview process, and I'm a big believer that having the right culture in place is the backbone for success, and I quickly realized, boy, we're in a little bit of trouble. What I inherited was a culture after 5 years of revenue and profit declines that really was beaten down and actually was comfortable with losing. Diet season, which is, we term it diet season. It happens every January 1st, New Year's resolution time. So I came in November 2012. Diet season was right around the corner. And when diet season started, things were not going well. You know, the marketing campaigns had already been set, and I kind of knew we weren't in for a good haul, but things were definitely not going well. But when I actually walked the halls and spoke to the team about it, the attitude was, oh, I guess we'll try again next year. And I'm like, folks, it's January. We have 11 more months. You know, even though January is the big time of year, we have time to figure things out and make progress. We're not giving up, packing up our bags and starting over in 11 months. That's a really long vacation. We have silos in the company. The contact center, which actually is our secret weapon. It's the pulse of our customer. We get a lot of amazing insights from our contact center. But the contact center and marketing weren't talking to each other. Supply chain and marketing weren't interacting well, and there was a lot of finger pointing happening. And there was a general lack of accountability throughout the whole company. And we had blinders on when it came to customer trends. We were wedded again to this one-size-fits-all approach to the market, and we were afraid to change for fear of cannibalizing ourselves despite having had our sales halve over a 5-year period. And finally, you know, as we think about ourselves as an e-commerce company where you have reams of customer data at your fingertips, there was a surprising lack of analytical rigor. I was asking pretty complex questions that required analysis, and the answers were really just rolling off people's tongues. I thought these people must be really, really smart, or they're just winging it. Well-intentioned, but I assure you that when I dug in, many of the answers were not fact-based. I told the company that I was really willing to engage in any conversation with them, that there was an open door policy, but our conversations really needed to be fact-based and data-driven, that I wasn't interested in theories or conjectures. I wasn't interested in revisionist history. I wanted research. I wanted test results. After all, we're an e-commerce company. We're direct-to-consumer, and that's the engineer in me coming out again. And I also said if we're just going to have hypotheses and talk generally about our opinions of how we should run the business, I'd go with my own. So really that started the change in culture across the entire company. The first 30 days, what I did was, and this is hard, I think it's hard when you come in as a CEO of a new company to just stop and listen and not immediately jump in. But, the first 30 days I spent really trying to actively listen, talking to people at all levels of the company, and I really, really learned a lot, especially from our contact center people who told me that no one had ever asked them before what they thought, people who told me they knew why the commercials weren't working, and people who over time have given me tremendous insight into product innovation. And I also did a lot of fact gathering, pouring through, as you can imagine, I love spreadsheets, Excel, lots of data around the customer and around what was happening, or looking at our key metrics to really understanding what was broken within the business. I also felt this really tremendous need for speed. Several of my trusted advisors told me you have 90 days to figure out the right culture and form the right team. And very importantly, you can't do it by yourself. So the people you put on the team are really going to be the key to your success or failure. And I did take that to heart. So my first task was really to build out my management team. And it was really interesting because there was a long transition. They had announced at Nutrisystem that they were going to transition the CEO in April of 2012, and I'd come into the company in November. So that's a 7-month period where people within the company didn't really know who their future leader was and knew that their existing leader was leaving. So it was fascinating to me that a lot of people at the executive level, several of them, had a wait-and-see attitude. Oh, let's see what the new person's going to do. We'll take it easy over these 7 months, and when the new CEO comes in, we'll decide if we're in or out. And in my mind, anybody that had a wait-and-see attitude didn't make the cut. And there were several, and it was really an easy decision for me because I needed people who were all in. So that was my first decision point. Anybody with a wait-and-see attitude was out. I decided I needed to bring in a new chief marketing officer and a new chief financial officer. They were my two critical hires. Let me talk a little bit about my chief marketing officer because I think this talks a little bit about how I went about the thought process of building a team. What I knew is that I had spent 20 years as a marketing person. I love marketing. I breathe it. It's what I do. I had come in to Nutrisystem to turn around, yes, a weight loss company, but really at the heart we're a marketing company as well. So I know I needed to bring in a chief marketing officer that kind of thought similarly to me, otherwise I would dig in too much to CMO land and not be a CEO. So I brought in somebody that I'd worked with in the past, that I had a tremendous amount of respect for, and actually told her that, you're running marketing, but please let me come play once in a while because I love marketing, and together, if we look at things together, two eyes are better than one. So if you're comfortable with that, that'll be great. And it's been a tremendous experience where she's driven the marketing across the company, but certainly is very open to my being involved, and that has just made the whole journey a lot of fun. Let's face it, when you're building a team, these are people that you spend a tremendous amount of time with. So it's really important that you build a team of qualified, smart, hardworking individuals, but it also helps if you like them because you're going to spend a lot of time with these people. The next person I focused on was bringing in the right chief financial officer. And while we're a public company and have to, we deal with the street a lot and all of that, deal with investors all the time, what I really needed was a CFO that was willing to roll up his sleeves, get into the details, and help analyze the business. And quite honestly, I can be a CFO's worst nightmare because I have such a love for numbers, and I'm one of those people, maybe it's my MIT training, I'm one of those weird people that I can pick out a bad number on a page in a second. and identify it. So I really needed a CFO that was going to dig into the numbers very robustly and take the lead in that, and that worked out. That worked out fabulous. The next thing, which I think are really red flags in an organization, was I looked at my human resources team and my legal team, and I think one of the most important things we do as leaders is really build the culture of a company, and we focus on the people we bring in. And if you have human resources not reporting into the CEO, I think that's a big problem and a big signal for the company. So in my case, the human resources group was reporting into the finance, the CFO, and I made an immediate change around that. The other thing was, we were the number 2 player in the space, second to Weight Watchers, yet we were never part of the conversation. So we didn't have a robust public relations platform built out. I remember coming from New York to Philly, and at that time there was a lot of conversation around banning big gulps or big sodas in New York City. And they were asking Jenny Craig, they were asking Weight Watchers what their opinion was, and we weren't part of the conversation, and it really bothered me because we were number 2 in the brand, number 2 in the weight loss space. So I brought in a very seasoned individual to head up our PR team, and now and told her goal in life was to make sure we were part of every weight loss mention out there. And I'm pleased to report, we'll talk more about this later, but we are definitely part of the mainstream conversation. So we've come a long way in the last 4 years. And then based on prior experiences I lived through, I had the quite amazing experience of working for 4 CEOs over a 5-year period when I was at Reader's Digest, working directly for these CEOs. Terrific people, but when you look at and when you're watching other CEOs in action, you have the opportunity to learn and take what you like about what they do, and then avoid what you don't like as much, and then you build your own way of managing. And one of the things I was very cognizant of was not building an us versus them culture. I was very careful to build a blended team of existing superstars that were already at Nutrisystem, brought in some new blood from my network of people, and also even tapped into some people who had left the company that were superstars and brought them back. And this really created a very blended team that was not weighted one way to people that had been at the company or to new people, and that's worked very well for us. Okay, and then once you have the team in place, the next thing you need to do is really define the culture. And I'm a big believer that if you don't define the culture will be defined for you, and often it's not in ways that you want them to. So my culture was just the facts, and it stands for exactly what it says. It's easy, memorable for everyone to understand. Actually stole the idea of an acronym from a former CEO at Reader's Digest, different acronym, but it is a great way to get the whole company to understand what you're striving for. So our acronym was FACTS, which at face value is just what it says, just the facts, and that gets to the point that I wanted to have data-driven, fact-based conversations. And then what we did in terms of the words around facts is we focused on what were important deficits to our cultures that were uncovered by an employee survey that we did. So facts, the F stands for being focused, which really is that we needed to set clear priorities and have goal setting. A stands for accountable, clear accountabilities, no finger pointing. C, customer-centric. The customers are really the heartbeat of what we do, and we need to understand and we need to service them, and we should never, ever assume that we know more about what they want than they do. T was team-oriented. I talked earlier about the silos between marketing, between supply chain, between the contact center. We had to break all of those down. And finally, the S stands for solution-oriented. We identify problems, but we come with solutions. And one of the big cultural changes is we had to tell people that it's really not cool to present your manager with a problem. That as people who work with the company, you really should strive to be two steps ahead of your manager in terms of problem solving. And while you don't need to have the whole solution fleshed out, you should at least come with an idea in terms of what the solutions might be to the problem that you're presenting. Sounds pretty basic, but really has actually made a huge difference in the culture and the way that the company is operating. At the same time, we set goals for everyone in the company. What gets measured gets done. And as a matter of fact, we have a placemat that shows the company goals and then each of my direct reports' goals bulleted out so everybody knows what they're accountable for, and this gets cascaded down to the entire organization. And then finally, we instituted a performance-based culture and made it very clear that we were going to differentiate bonuses based on individual performance and contributions, and that if we didn't perform, if we didn't meet our goals, there wouldn't be bonuses. And this was a big, I think, culture shock to the company because basically in the past, everybody that was at the same level got the same bonus, and there was really no differentiation between employees. And we felt it was really important to have this performance-based culture to really reward people who were all in and who were sweating it out with us. So once the team was in place and our cultural foundation was established, we began embarking on what we called our 4-point turnaround plan. The first thing was to focus on costs. We reviewed every line in the P&L. We identified millions of dollars in cost saves. And what we did is we had to pay our dividend because when I came to the company, we were a dividend-paying stock. We still are. But it was really dicey if we were actually going to be able to afford to pay the dividend at the time. So the first thing we did is we paid the dividend. And then what we did with the rest of the money is we reinvested it into our e-commerce platform. And that was something that when the company was flailing a bit, we hadn't invested to the level that we should, which is kind of shocking considering we're an e-commerce company. As a matter of fact, the e-commerce team had left the company in 2011, and when I got here in 2012, still didn't have a leader in place, and that was almost an 18-month time horizon. So we quickly worked on filling that gap. The other thing we did is we started innovating around weight loss. We listened to our customers. We did a ton of research, and we did clinical studies to make sure that we could support the claims that we wanted to make. And it's really important because we had the benefit of the last management team that had focused a lot on food and really had evolved us tremendously in the food space. But really, again, we're not a food company, we're a weight loss company. So now this team was working on evolving in the weight loss programs. We focused on the fundamentals of marketing, which I'll talk to in a moment, but that really was, I would say, the singular success, one of the top reasons for our success. We also focused on new points of distribution, entered into retail, expanded beyond TV marketing into digital acquisition channels, and most importantly, we did all this with excellence. So we had a strategy in place, but definitely, strategies don't work unless you have people operating with excellence, and we put a premium value on that. So as we think about the product, we really spent a lot of time reimagining the brand and how we could innovate around it. We definitely weren't keeping up with customer trends, and we were selling the same product to everyone at lower and lower price points to fewer and fewer people. That's a recipe for disaster. Our products and our marketing were not working, and the weird thing is we weren't talking about weight loss. We were just talking about food. And again, we'd done a lot of good work in the food space, but we'd started to reposition our food from ready-to-go weight loss product to gourmet food. And let me tell you that, there are a lot of great restaurants, and our food is good. It's good for weight loss, but it's not the equivalent experience of going to a nice French gourmet restaurant. So again, our messages weren't really resonating with the consumer. So we embarked on a period of very rapid innovation. When I came into the company, I was asked, we had an opportunity to enter into Walmart and enter into the retail space, and there was a lot of concern about that for fear of cannibalization. But we decided that we would do it, and we introduced 5-day weight loss kits in Walmart that really opened up a much broader audience to us at a price point of $45 for people that couldn't afford our $300 a month product. We also decided that we would focusing on weight loss instead of the food. Our first product was Fast 5, which had a claim against it of lose 5 pounds in 1 week. We then moved to Turbo 10, and this year we're doing Lean 13, lose up to 13 pounds in 1 month. Again, safe, clinically tested, scientifically backed, and no fads and no gimmicks. Shakes became a big part of our offering. Digital apps and tools, we invested in building a great digital app and tools for our customers, which is really table stakes for being in the business today. And we moved the majority of our customers from ready-to-go products, pantry items, to frozen products. We also tested a fresh product, and we'll talk more about that in a little bit. But the fresh product was really not mainstream because the return needed on it commanded too high a price point for the market. And the other thing we did was we became more comfortable with moving away from this one-size-fits-all product, and we began to offer more flexible options to our customers, a la carte items for people who would return, and really focused on the customer journey and allowing people to have a much longer and meaningful relationship with us. So marketing really has been the front and center to our turnaround, and we've leveraged marketing in 3 key ways. The first is attracting new customers to the brand, and we've had 4 years of new customer growth, double-digit new customer growth, and it's been quite rewarding. Everything we do, because we're an e-commerce company, is very ROI focused. So, we place ads and we can see the value of those ads, and we always operate to a certain level of investment based on lifetime value. We have new messaging around the benefits of our product, the dream of weight loss. We raised the price. Once we had the right product in place and we're talking about weight loss, we actually found that we were able to raise price. Now, bear in mind, when I came to the company, we talked about the price discounting, and the price was $30 lower in 2012 than it was in 2007, and that was actually translated into close to $100 in revenue per customer that was lost because our average customer stays with us on the full program for about 3 months. So over the last couple of years, we've been able to recapture a lot of that. We also focused on our e-commerce site. There's a lot of marketing and a lot of marketing that happens on the e-commerce site, and putting boxes in certain places, emphasizing certain things really can have a great great increase in response. We started collecting email names and then marketing to them, and then we started offering upsells. So in addition to just selling our main product, our contact center and our e-commerce site began to offer upsells like shakes and other items, additional snacks, things along those lines to our customers, all with great success. We also focused on extending the existing relationship with our customer. And this, I would say, has been a huge, huge source of growth for us. And it's interesting because, if you think about, you spend all your money on acquiring the upfront customer. But what really matters then in terms of getting your return on investment is what you do with that customer once you have them within your database. And we were a marketing team that focused 95% of our time on acquiring new customers and very little of our time, maybe on the drive home from work every night, thinking about how to retain them. So what we ended up doing is we split marketing into 2 teams, and we actually hired a person from Reader's Digest whose sole responsibility was to focus on the customer experience and to drive revenue per customer. This person focused on upsells, focused on length of stay, focused on content, having relevant experiences for the customer engagement, and embedding sales into the process. And we've seen tremendous growth over the last couple of years as a result of that initiative, and now we have a full team in place working on that, a full new team of e-commerce folks working on the website, and then terrific people focusing on acquisition and creative. We also expanded into new customer segments with existing and new brands. So again, getting into retail through Walmart, where we were attracting a different customer, new day parts on television, digital acquisition sources that we weren't really historically involved in. The weight loss market is big, and we also began at this time to think about acquiring new brands. So I think our secret sauce, one of the reasons we've been able to turn around the company and we've moved from a turnaround period to a growth period, is our disciplined and methodical approach, which is really based on analytical rigor and data. We are masterful iterators. We sweat the details, and we're always looking for more, whether it be on the revenue or on the cost side. For a marketing company with what I would say is considerable creative chops, we're very deliberate and methodical in our approach. We test everything, and it comes back again to that analytical rigor, and probably comes back to my engineering background. We excel at making adjustments that add up to big wins, top line and bottom line. And the truth of the matter is very little goes exactly as planned. I think that's life. But we've had 14 consecutive quarters of growth, and there has been some nail-biting moments, But that's where the data-oriented culture really helps, finding the insights, testing, and learning when things are going well, so you can build off that, and also when things aren't going right, so you can learn from what's going on. The team jokes because I think that we're at our best when things actually get a little off kilter, when things aren't going exactly as planned. Maybe it's that we can fix it mentality, going from the culture 4 years ago to accepting defeat to now a culture that believes we can fix anything with hard work and analysis. Well, we all get super energized, and this is, again, a big cultural change for us. We figure things out, and there's nothing more rewarding than that. And last year, another example of our culture is my chief marketing officer brought in a congratulations cake for the team to celebrate a big marketing win that we had. And it was a nice little get-together that lasted about 10 minutes, and she closed the congratulatory speech with, "So what are we going to do next? I want you to wake up each morning and think about how we can do better than yesterday." And I think that comes back to the culture that we've established. We're not just content to hit our numbers. Fortunately, we do a good job at that. But it's always about constant improvement every day. It's not about what you did last quarter. It's about what you did yesterday and how we can wake up and improve upon that. So if I look back, I would say there were several lessons employed during year one of the turnaround and as a first-time CEO that I believe helped set us up for success. I'd like to talk a second about mentors and coaches, because I think when you get to be in your 40s and 50s, you think that the time for being mentored has passed, and it's time for me to do the mentoring. And I would say, yes, it's true. It is time to give back and mentor people. But it's also probably one of the most important times for you to have mentors and people in your life that will coach you and give you some great advice. And I've been fortunate, very fortunate during my career to have several mentors and coaches that have really become trusted advisors to me and guide me. I think back to earlier in my career when I was in marketing, and the person I worked for, John Klingel, told me, "Don't let the tail wag the dog." And that was a lifelong lesson of really, if you believe in something and if you have a great marketing idea, don't let process get in the way of innovation. And I think that has been something that I've carried with me for a long time. Later on at Reader's Digest, during that period of tremendous change, I had a CEO who actually moved me from one role to another role. I was very uncomfortable with it. But what he told me is that during this period of time, you're going to use not only your direct marketing and your direct P&L skills, but you're going to work on your soft skills a little bit, and you're going to be in a little bit more of a staff role. During that period, I got very comfortable with change. And, certainly what we know about change is change always happens. So if you don't like change, don't worry, it'll change again. And finally, the person that I rely on the most today is Brad Thomas, who is my executive coach. And he's given me a lot of insights and diverse experiences to work with all the great, a lot of great companies, Pepsi, GE, Guardian, Insulet, and really has been a key advisor to me on business issues and cultural issues within the company. And it's really important. I'm a big believer that mentors can't be assigned. They need to be handpicked. But it's really important that you let into your circle people who are going to challenge you, even as a CEO, and not be afraid to tell you to do this differently, to think differently about things. So I really value having people like this in my life because it really makes a huge difference. So I encourage everyone, no matter, we have a diverse amount of people, range of ages of people on the call, but never think you're too old for mentors or coaches, because you're not. The other lesson I learned was move fast on getting the right team in place. Again, and more advice from my executive coach. And this is really important because, you have 100 days or 90 days to get moving, and it's hard to make these changes early on. But you can make them, and, it doesn't have to be perfect. And this is another message. You can overcut, you can make changes, you can add back later. But what you need to make sure of, especially in the first year of a turnaround, is that you don't get paralyzed and have to know all the answers before making any decision. Very importantly, understand the culture you have. Define the culture you want, because if the right culture isn't in place, the company's not going to work. You're not going to be able to execute. You're not going to be able to innovate. I'm a huge believer in that. And, before you redecorate the kitchen, make sure the plumbing works. So there's the example of our e-commerce. We didn't have the infrastructure in place. We were an e-commerce company, but the e-commerce infrastructure wasn't where we needed it to be for a company that was a leader in the weight loss space through e-commerce. So really, before you put all the fancy bells and whistles on, really make sure that that plumbing underneath is working. Communicate, communicate, communicate. I think when a new CEO comes into a company, one of the most important things is communicating where you're going, because there's a lot of angst. There's a lot of angst when there's new leadership, and it comes down to people not understanding the changes that you'll make. And I would say, I don't think people are afraid of change. I think people are afraid of not knowing where you're going. So again, if you're going to change things, communicating it on and outlining a path makes it a lot easier for the whole organization. We were trying to turn around the company, and it took us a while to get some big wins on the table, but a big message for us, again, to change the culture from one that believed that they couldn't win to one that believed that they could, was really celebrating some of the small wins early on. Fortunately, the wins have gotten bigger and bigger, but, really important to celebrate the small wins and to always make sure that you're acknowledging those people that are making the difference, hence the performance-based culture. And then finally, being a good salesman only gets you so far, and, especially when you're dealing with the street, and you really need to deliver. So, set those commitments, and then, work really hard on achieving them, because, you don't get given many, you're not given many chances to not deliver. Okay, so 4 years later, both the company's profits and stock have more than quadrupled, and we passed the $1.5 billion market cap, went from $234 million to $1.5 billion. So we've had quite a bit of success. We still keep our eyes on cost. We manage every line of the P&L with an unbelievable amount of discipline. We sweat the details. We're in the weight loss space, which is large. 2/3 of the American population obese or overweight, and we've embarked on a multi-brand strategy. We just acquired the South Beach Diet brand last December and just launched it. So now we have 2 powerhouse brands in the space of weight loss. It's an exciting time. We have the right culture in place. The team has the courage. The team has the heart, and that's really important because we're dealing with people who are really struggling with real-life issues. And I believe that, the strategy and vision that I set, that the leadership team sets, certainly outlines the path forward, but it really has been the exceptional execution of our team and the dedication and passion. And that comes back to culture that really has transformed the company. So thank you. Hand it back over to her.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Dawn. And I apologize to anyone who experienced any of the technical difficulties we were having. There was a little issue with WebEx, but I think you all saw a clear presentation, so hopefully it didn't affect very many of you. But that was fantastic information, and it's really impressive what you've done in the short amount of time that you've been there. So thank you for sharing it with us. As a reminder for all of our viewers, please type in your questions for Dawn in the Q&A box on the right-hand side of your screen. While you're doing that, I'd like to take a moment to tell you about some upcoming events that MIT Sloan will be hosting. Our upcoming MIT Sloan Alumni Online program includes next month Professor John Sturman on building a sustainable world from climate change to personal and political change. In June, alumna Sharon Mosali will talk about what happens if you just ask. And in July, alumna Christina Chi will walk you through navigating the MIT entrepreneurial ecosystem, which she has done to get her company up and running. We also have some great opportunities for you to connect with us in person coming up. Sloan Reunion is taking place on campus June 8th through 11th. We will be hosting the Harnessing the Digital Revolution Conference in San Francisco on June 20th, and our first MIT Sloan Women's Conference in New York City on October 20th. And now we're going to move on to your questions for Dawn. We'd like to start today's Q&A with 2 spotlight questions that were submitted during the RSVP process. Our first question comes from Brett Aubrey, who's an MBA and SM from 06 and from San Diego. And Dawn, Brett asks, how big was the transition from one industry, media, to another industry, weight loss?
That's a great question, and it's a question that the investors asked me, not quite so kindly. The investors asked me more bluntly, why are you here? How does this make sense? It's a little intimidating when you get asked that as a first-time CEO, but the reason why it made sense is I think that, skill sets are portable from one industry to another. So if I think about Reader's Digest, it was an iconic brand that was going through a period of turnaround. Nutrisystem was an iconic brand that needed a turnaround. Reader's Digest, while it's best known for the little magazine, actually was one of the pioneers in database marketing and certainly in direct-to-consumer marketing. So again, as I define the company as a weight loss company, but also define Nutrisystem as a marketing company. So those skills were directly portable. So I think, and then of course the experience. I think leadership and training certainly is portable from one industry to another. So there were a couple of key things that from Reader's Digest that were directly relevant to Nutrisystem, and when I explained it to the investors, they actually thought that it made sense.
Great. I think that makes perfect sense as well. Our next spotlight question comes from Harini, who was an EMBA class of 2017, or is an EMBA class of 2017 here in Cambridge. And Harini asks, what are key soft skills and people skills that you have been using to make this a successful turnaround? What has been your main failure or failures and lesson or lessons learned that you can share as advice for us?
I think the key soft skills come down to listening and active listening, and sometimes that's hard, right? Because we all want to go, and it's really important that we pause and listen. And I would tell you, if I didn't listen to my contact center, if I didn't listen to the people across the company and really understand early on what the issues were that we were facing from a cultural perspective, if I didn't listen to my coach, things like that, the turnaround wouldn't have been as successful. So listening is key, and equally as important as listening, again, is communicating. So I think people are willing to join you on a journey, even if it's hard, and turnarounds are hard. But people are willing to join you if you lay out a clear path and constantly communicate with them and show progress and update and, reward people for performance. So again, it all comes down to those softer people issues, the culture issues. And I think the company, we've done a good job with that over the last couple of years. Main failures. Well, as I said earlier, nothing ever goes exactly as planned. And I think one of the things, I think actually, if you fail fast, I think it can be very healthy. So I think if you're innovating, and most innovations don't work, the key is to really make sure you have key metrics set up against those innovative initiatives. Understand the investment that you're willing to make and the key metrics that you need to make it successful. And if things aren't going right, fail fast. Make a decision quickly and, don't put good money after bad. And make sure, because I will tell you that every failure that one faces, if you go back and analyze it and try to rejigger it a little bit, there's key learnings there. And I would say, we've had some things that didn't go as planned that we learned a lot from and ultimately have made a lot of money from. So I think the lesson when it comes to failure is understand what you're trying to achieve, have clear metrics, hard metrics against those, and then fail fast if it's not working.
Great, thank you. Our next question comes from Sue Nagel, MBA 97, and Sue says, thanks for a great presentation. What has been your biggest personal challenge with this turnaround and new role?
It's interesting because I'm chair this year of the American Heart Association's Go Red for Women initiative, and one of the things that we talk about is work-life balance. And I think, when you take on a new role, it's important to have that work-life balance, but it's hard. So one of the things that we talk about a lot in the company and externally as well is how to help people have that work-life balance. And certainly it's a work in process for me. What I like to say is, when it comes to my kids, for example, really understanding what's important that you're there for them for. As working people, we can't be there for every single event. But, and my kids are older now, so not quite as needed, I guess. But, really to be there, understand when you need to be there and make sure that you allocate your time appropriately for that. I'm fortunate because I always say my number one job is being a mom, and I'm fortunate to have this really amazing hobby that I get to do every day and get to spend, 12 hours a day doing, and it's pretty fantastic. But, have your priorities right.
Absolutely. Our next question comes from Ryan Shafnos, and Ryan asks, when considering the value of data-driven and numbers-based information and insights, what recommendation would you have for those of us with senior leadership that prefer gut estimates in storytelling?
Yikes. Well, I think one of the things that we did, which I think is important, is when we changed the culture to a facts-based culture, the initial reaction from people on the team was to do data dumps. And that's really not what we were asking for as leadership at all. What we were asking for is insights. So really, giving a page of 500 numbers on it and not circling the number that you're supposed to be looking at, it's really helpful to keep people in. So I think you use data as your tool to tell the story and to support the story, but using data doesn't let you off the hook for making those key insights and key observations that allow you to drive action and decisions. And I think that is something that as a company took us a while to get right. Have the headline at the top of the page, simple basics of presentations, but don't drown in the numbers. You have to get the insights out of the numbers.
Great. Our next question comes from Anita Wu, and Anita also says, thank you for a great session. And her question is, did you hire outside help, advisors or consultants to bolster short-term resources and support the turnaround?
Well, as I said earlier, I relied heavily on some outside coaches. My executive coach, Brad Thomas. I relied on other people that I brought in to help with our initial turnaround strategy, Eric Schreier. But, we were focused on getting that right internal team in place to move us forward. And that was where the focus was, getting the right people as my direct reports, and then at the next level of the company, getting the right people in place for those key roles. And, it's important to do that. And I would say that was how we focused.
Great. And then we have time for one more question. And there's actually a couple questions that came in along this same vein. This one specifically came from JC Munoz. And JC asks, you mentioned that during the first 100 days, you did some fundamental changes. How long did it take to change the culture? And how did you realize that culture had really changed?
Well, we're a big believer in that what gets measured gets done. So it's not a perfect tool, but we did an employee survey when I came in on pretty much within the first 20 days that I was there, and then we did the follow-up survey a year later, and we could see measurable changes in results there in terms of how people were feeling about the fact-based culture. You could also just feel, if you're saying the culture is on priorities, on accountability, customer-centric, you could feel those changes happening within the organization, and it takes time. Certainly doesn't happen within 30 days, but again, I think this is where leadership and leadership buy-in to the culture is really important, because it has to be constantly reinforced top down and then has to permeate from bottoms up. So it was a huge focus for us, but what we also I think the recognition would happen when in meetings that I wasn't at or that other top leadership wasn't at, when the conversations were happening across the table that I hear about later, which was, hey, we're not really dealing in facts here, let's have a facts-based conversation, gave everybody a common platform that they could talk to. And I think that's when the realization happened that we were changing. Of course, getting the wins on the table, you need the culture in place, but then you need to deliver the results. And I think once we started having the right culture, which allowed us, again, to have that foundation in place to build to really build the strategy off of, and we started delivering results that showed up to the street. That was when, everybody sort of got on the bus.
Great. Dawn, thank you so much. This was a really fantastic discussion, and I think everybody who is commenting in the Q&A will agree with that. So thank you.
Thank you.
Absolutely. And Sloanies and friends of MIT Sloan, thank you so much for joining the conversation today. We look forward to seeing you in the coming months for our future programs, which are all made possible in part by the MIT Sloan Annual Fund. As today's event closes, we will ask you to complete a short survey to help us create programming that will be the most impactful to you moving forward. Until next month, thank you so much for joining MIT Sloan Alumni Online.